Thank you so much, Kaylee. Welcome, everybody. I have Mary O'Connell, who is our 3PL expert here at FreightWaves and host of Check Call. Mary, welcome to the program. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely fabulous. You had a show this week talking about final mile action here. Let's dig into that a little bit. Spill some tea for us here. What's happened?
Well, so today we have the honor to talk to Fillogic. They're a beautiful little startup company that is just really trying to maximize the final mile space. And basically we talked to them, learned some tips and tricks. And, for the 3PLs out there that are trying to get more e-commerce and final mile deliveries and get that network kind of built up, because e-commerce, as we all know, is not going anywhere anytime soon. So it's only a matter of time that you end up with one of those customers and you're left handling a final mile delivery. So we talk about some pro tips. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna be a proponent of your point that it's not going away anytime soon. Just speaking, Port of Baltimore just recently on What the Truck, Zimline's running into their ocean carrier from Asia, and also Maersk into the Northeast as well, as e-commerce to move that closer and closer. So even the maritime carriers specifically running routes for e-commerce.
Yes, absolutely. And that will not change. I actually probably see that type of volume doubling, if not more, as we kind of go on in the next few years. But the basically just kind of tips and tricks, making sure that your technology is there, because a lot of where some of the talent and the extra capacity lies outside of UPS and FedEx, which we all know and love. But they do have limitations to their network. Some of those regional partners are really great underutilized services, but they don't have necessarily the technology to handle that middle mile services. So basically just kind of serve as the technology hub, get them signed up, get that visibility, get that tracking. So that way we've all grown to love, where's my package? The other day I got a fridge delivered and it told me how many stops ahead of me there were. And I was like, this is excessive, but I like it. And so I only think that stuff like that is going to just continue to happen. And those 3PL partners that do truly value it as a partnership and do that and have that technology investment and are willing to just communicate and cooperate with everybody, I think that's really going to be the future.
So Mary, I love that point that you bring up, because it's like the Amazon effect, right? Amazon has had this effect on everybody where their last mile services are so great that this is going to hit me between 2:53 in the afternoon and 3:05. Like you've got this
Exactly.
incredibly tight window. And that takes a lot of coordination and really just a really huge amount of transparency and visibility to be able to do that. And that's something that I think there's a lot of room for adoption, I guess, almost in these 3PL partners. If you're a 3PL partner that's looking to get into this last mile space, what is your first step? What should you look at first? Is it that visibility component? Is it that communications component? Is it just finding a partner and a carrier who's willing to do that work for you?
I think a lot of it comes down to ultimately knowing those carrier partners, knowing what areas they serve, what areas are their weak points, and what areas they thrive in, and then really finding a customer that's going to match and complement that carrier entirely, because as we know, not every carrier matches with every customer. It's a nightmare sometimes. But the biggest point is just understanding your customers' needs, knowing what they want, understanding their goals, figuring out what they're trying to achieve, and then match them with a carrier that has similar goals, similar ways to make that happen, and really just kind of almost playing matchmaker between potential regional and smaller final mile carriers and the nationwide ones, and that customer, just kind of, being a matchmaker for them.
Yeah, it's a difficult space and it's hard to define. It's as hard to define as it is to operate in a final mile. I liken it to break bulk and maritime. You really don't know how to describe it, but I know it when I see it, right? And combining those people together, getting those customers and providers and carriers and so on and so forth together is really difficult, because final mile could be business to business, but it can also be, and obviously when most things come to people's mind is e-commerce and delivering packages to houses. But that's also installation of Mary O'Connell's refrigerator, which is a totally different skill set, right? So
Yes.
that's very, very difficult, right?
It is. And it's really, that's where it all comes back to knowing your customer, knowing what their products are. And I mean, we could say this about any truckload, LTL, maritime, ocean, air, final mile. You can say that about anything. It's knowing your customer, knowing their product, knowing what they want to achieve. If they are, let's say if they are concerned about the lowest cost, but they don't really care that much about delivery times, then you'll always put them on the lowest cost carrier. Same with if you have a final mile situation. But if your customer cares more about service, they're probably going to be happy paying more. And it's about knowing what they want and how to give your customer what they want, which is ultimately what any 3PL should be doing. And if they're not, they might need to reevaluate some things.
Mary, let's talk a little bit about the foray into final mile versus diving headfirst and going into white glove service and going into expedite service in your final mile as well. Because if you're in a 3PL that maybe is starting to get into the final mile, you don't want to dive all in, right, and go straight to that white glove to that expedite service, because you can very, very quickly get in over your head. Yes. So can you talk a little bit about kind of that slow roll almost, starting into final mile and then maybe seeing, you know what, I like doing the little bit more complicated things. Maybe I'll try out looking at white glove service. Maybe I'll try out running expedite too.
I absolutely, I've seen it happen where someone's like, we're going to go all in. And then you're left sitting there wondering, well, how do I find people to do white glove services? Well, isn't that the same as final mile? And then it's just a whole nightmare, and your customer leaves 6 months in, and it's super great and makes tons of money. But, in reality, it's more of, I would start with an e-commerce shipper. For the most part, e-commerce, maybe a smaller one, for the most part that you're just going to be putting packages on a doorstep. It's not going to be anything big. That's where you really go through their inventory and say, all right, well, are you shipping refrigerators, or are you shipping air fryers and clothes and other things like that, where it might just be a small box that I put up on a thing, or I just drop it off on the porch. It's going to be a lot of residential deliveries. You're going to get hit with some of those residential surcharges, which make up 20 to 30% of a final mile transportation spend. But it's going to be start with some of those, the smaller ones that you can just set on a porch and walk away. And if you like doing that, then foray into one white glove customer, where maybe we deliver it into one room of the house, but we don't set it up. And then,
first drive.
Then just, yes, exactly. We'll deliver it into one room. That's it. And then if you like that, all right, well, maybe toss in some assembly services, maybe toss in some building, maybe toss in some expedited. With all that added, the world's your oyster once you're kind of comfortable with it. But I would definitely say one customer at a time, slowly kind of roll your way into it. Because if you just go pedal to the metal, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, it's like going from no flatbeds directly to total open deck and
all
project
flatbed.
Freight. Oh yeah, yeah.
All flatbed all the time.
All flatbed all the time. Open deck, heavy with project freight. That type of stuff can just crash and burn really quick, because you got to build up that trust. It's really trust more than it is price when you're breaking into that stuff and trying to grow.
Absolutely. Some of these, it's pretty much anything that's not full truckload, you're going to need to build up some trust first.
All right, Mary, well, thank you for joining us today. Always great to hear your perspective. Check out Check Call on FreightWaves TV here on Tuesday afternoons. All right, now we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes.